Seniors on Social Security are no doubt celebrating after learning that, come January 2015, their payouts will go up a whopping 1.7% by federal law. Cost of living adjustments COLA linked to the inflation rate of the Wages Consumer Price Index CPIW. In 1975, when Social Security disbursed the first COLA, recipients got an 8% raise. A 2015 COLA of under 2% is based on the current rate of CPIW inflation. Yet, how is it possible for inflation to be this low when everyone experiences the meteoric rise in the price of the most basic goods and services? For example, between September 2013 and September 2014, the cost of food eating at home via grocery stores increased 3.2%, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture Economic Research Service. Additionally, the National Energy Assistance Directors Association NEDA projects that heating costs will rise an average of 10.5% for Americans during the winter 2014 to 2015. Not to mention the skyrocketing costs of medical services and health insurance. Beneficiaries of an 8% Social Security COLA in 1975 paid a whole lot less for everything than do the beneficiaries of the 2015 1.7% COLA. An item costing 00 in 1975 in 2014 costs 42.00. Bureau of Labor Statistics inflation calculator, and in 2015, that same item will cost even more. The increase in the cost of living comes as no surprise to Americans who need credit just to make ends meet. It just does not add up. For the retired worker in 2014, the Social Security website says the average monthly check is $294. Pretty scary. How can a 1.7% COLA help seniors to meet even the most basic costs of food and energy? The short answer: it cannot. The longer answer confirms what many suspect. Not only is this 1.7% increase insufficient, but it does not accurately reflect actual inflation. Economist John Williams tells the whole story and proves that the real rate of inflation in 2014 would be 9.4% if it were not for what he calls government's gimmicks for understanding inflation. On his website, shadowstats.com, he wrote this back when G.W. Bush was president. If Lyndon Johnson didn't like the growth that was going to be reported in the GNP, he sent it back to the Commerce Department, and he kept doing so until Commerce got it right. The Carter administration was caught deliberately understating inflation. The first Bush administration began efforts at the systematic reduction of the reported rate of CPI inflation. One cannot help but wonder why for decades administrations have focused on new and lower inflation CPI might self-interest cloud the government's purpose for keeping the official CPI low. Consider this: the lower the inflation calculation, the lower the COLA payouts for Social Security and other entitlements. Why saving money is difficult. Over 70% don't think Social Security will be their primary revenue source, yet 46 to 56% of respondents not yet on Social Security between ages 50 and 75 do believe it will be their primary source. 30% said they will probably need to work in a traditional setting until 80 years of age. 68% stated that saving was harder than they expected, with 34% not participating in any form of retirement savings. Across all age groups was the expectation of needing $50,000 for retirement. There was a lack of confidence over 50% across all age groups of being able to live the life they wanted in retirement. The percentage rose to over 70% for those 50 to 59 years old. 25% said they feel depressed when thinking about their financial life in retirement, with 22% saying they would prefer to die early. The banks want you to start saving when you are young with them, of course, so you can successfully meet your retirement goals. They somehow forget to factor in that today's cost of living prohibits many families from being able to save, and less earnings put into savings are offset by increased credit access. And also, what they never tell you is the degree to which you will suffer the loss of purchasing power once you access retirement funds. They too rely on the official low CPI calculations. What lies ahead? Unfortunately, the imminent future of Social Security appears dismal, especially as the government has been scrambling since the 2008 economic meltdown. Congress has been discussing how the government could lower its financial obligation to Social Security while continuing to make guaranteed monthly payments at COLAs. The option most mentioned is about changing how COLAs are calculated. By unlinking the COLA to the CPIW index and instead linking it to an index called chain CPI, the government would slow the rate at which benefits increase and thereby save billions. Given the 2014 election year, chain CPI remains on the back burner but is said likely to resurface. How would this shift change things for the beneficiary? The good news first. If and once the index transitions to the chain CPI, initially, a beneficiary's check will end up showing only a slight amount less than with the current CPIW index calculation. But as you probably have already guessed, the beneficiary ultimately ends up with the short end of the stick. Though the initial loss is negligible, the cumulative loss over the long term brings the bad news. This same AIER article continues. The article concludes with the recommendation of yet another CPI, the experimental CPIE, for Americans 62 years and older, who spend more on medical care and housing, but less on education, communication, food, and transportation. Most likely, this experimental index would also reflect the government's goal of keeping the official CPI artificially low. With the geometrical loss of purchasing power, the government formula for your later years' financial well-being leaves you begging. The only way most Americans will be able to thrive throughout their retirement is if they plan for and develop additional streams of revenue, and the sooner the better. We are on our own to see the future realistically and plan for it accordingly. Re-inspirement is an idea whose time has definitely come.